A submarine is a formidable weapon capable of wiping an entire city off the face of the earth, but like any complex structure, it can break down, and even a minor malfunction can lead to a terrible tragedy. In the history of the Soviet Union and Russia, let's talk about major accidents involving submarines. Submarines carry a substantial arsenal on board, and if a torpedo or missile detonates inside the hull, it can be catastrophic. An example is the tragic story of the K-219. The submarine had 16 missile tubes on board, and one of them began to leak. Under pressure from the water, the missile deformed and exploded, resulting in the death of a crew member. After the accident, the submarine underwent a major overhaul. But a few years later, another missile silo began leaking. The crew used pumps to remove the water, but the responsible officer did not report the issue to the commander. Before each sea voyage, the submarine underwent various checks, and each time, the problem was considered non-critical. Over time, the situation deteriorated, and water had to be pumped out more frequently. In 1986, while the submarine was patrolling off the coast of the United States, a disaster occurred. The scenario was unfolding as expected. Water flooded the silo, and under pressure, the missile exploded. 3 crew members lost their lives. The submarine surfaced, but a new problem emerged. The nuclear reactor's temperature began to rise, and due to a power supply failure, it couldn't be shut down remotely. A 20-year-old sailor named Sergei Preminin entered the reactor compartment and manually lowered the control rods, preventing a nuclear explosion. However, he could not exit the compartment. The hatch was jammed. He died of suffocation and heat stroke. The next day, Soviet ships arrived at the scene. The K-219 was evaluated, and it was closely monitored by the Americans. However, for unknown reasons, the tow line snapped, and the nuclear cruiser sank to a depth of 5,500 meters. The events around K-219 inspired books and films. Sergei Preminin posthumously received the title of Hero of Russia, and streets, promenades, schools, and a museum were named after him. Initially, there were plans to prosecute the responsible parties, but later the idea was abandoned. Another case involved the K-429, an atomic submarine that sank twice. After the first sinking in 1983, it essentially went out of service. The reason was a malfunction of several systems, but despite the need for extensive repairs, the military command decided to send the submarine for training exercises without addressing the issues fully. The primary crew was called back from vacation, but not everyone returned. Instead, more than half of the crew were taken from 5 other submarines, with various violations in the selection process. K-429 was lowered into the sea off Kamchatka, Russia, and during a test dive, water began to flood through the ventilation of the 4th compartment. 14 people perished. Even though rescue divers were sent to help, they had an accident, and 2 more individuals lost their lives. The rescue operation lasted 4 days, and the incident was classified. K-429 was eventually raised from the seabed but sank again shortly afterward. The submarine was sent for disposal. Throughout its history, from 1969 to its final fate, K-429 had a series of misfortunes. Submarines have played a significant role in naval history, often shrouded in secrecy, and some have met unfortunate ends. Collisions with ships are one of the dangers that submarines face. In the autumn of 1981, such an accident resulted in a major tragedy. In the evening, the diesel-powered submarine S-178 was on the surface, heading to Vladivostok after completing a training mission. Several crew members, including the commander, were on the bridge outside the submarine. Suddenly, from the darkness, a fishing vessel appeared to have collided with the submarine. According to some reports, the crew of the ship was intoxicated, and their navigation lights were not functioning. They mistook the submarine for a small tugboat, which they assumed would yield the right-of-way. However, the collision caused significant damage, and the submarine quickly began sinking. A massive breach formed in the 6th compartment, leading to the death of half the crew. 26 sailors managed to seal themselves in the bow compartments, but the submarine came to rest on the seabed at a depth of 32 meters. They had limited food, water, and breathing apparatus, which made the situation dire. The 27-year-old senior warrant officer, Sergei Kubanin, took charge and used the cable communication to report the situation to the surface. Unfortunately, the cable soon snapped, delaying help. To boost morale and motivation, Kubanin awarded the submariners with military decorations and promoted them. The rescue operation began on the second day, with the sailors exiting through the torpedo tubes and being guided by divers to a rescue submarine stationed nearby. Some submariners had to fend off the divers and resurface on their own, sustaining lung injuries. Tragically, 6 individuals disappeared without a trace, while 2 died from the stress they had experienced. The incident was kept classified for 25 years, and the S-178 was eventually raised and scrapped. The conning tower was transformed into a monument to the commander of the submarine, Valery Morin. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and the captain and the senior warrant officer received 15 and 10 years, respectively. A fire on a submarine can lead to severe consequences due to the presence of flammable materials on board. If not extinguished in time, a fire can not only poison people with carbon monoxide, but also cause a breach in even the most robust submarine's hull. This happened with the K-278 Komsomolets, an atomic submarine known for its reliability. The submarine set a record for diving to a depth of 1,027 meters in 1989. During its third combat patrol in 1989, while patrolling the Norwegian Sea at a depth of 380 meters, a fire broke out in the last, 7th compartment. The reactor protection system activated, and the submarine lost power. The command was given to blow the main ballast tanks, which allowed air to flow through a damaged pipeline, leading to a blowtorch effect. The fire's temperature reached 1,000 degrees Celsius, igniting an adjacent compartment. When the submarine surfaced, many crew members had already suffered burns and carbon monoxide poisoning. For 6 hours, the crew attempted to extinguish the fire, but without success. Komsomolet started to sink, which no one expected from such a robust submarine. Most of the crew ended up in the icy water, and with only one rescue capsule available, they had to swim to reach it. Unfortunately, not everyone could escape in time. 5 people managed to transfer to the emerging rescue capsule, but they couldn't detach it to ascend freely. While they were submerged, the capsule experienced a critical depth, causing an explosion that propelled it to the surface. Only one petty officer, Viktor Slyunkov, survived. Almost an hour after the submarine sank, the first Soviet ship arrived. The crew had spent the entire time in cold water, and many died from hypothermia. The investigation could not determine the exact cause of the fires, with the leading theory suggesting an electrical equipment malfunction. One of the most tragic incidents in the history of submarines was the loss of the K-141 Kursk, an atomic submarine. In the summer of 2000, during exercises in the Barents Sea, the submarine sank to a depth of 108 meters. On the surface, no one knew about it. The accident was only declared 12 hours later, and the Kursk was found on the seabed with a massive breach in the bow section. There was still hope that there might be survivors inside, but the rescue operation only commenced on the 11th day after the accident. Norwegian divers managed to access the interior, but no signs of life were found. All 118 crew members had perished. For the investigation into the cause of the submarine sinking, it was raised to the surface. According to the official version, an instructional torpedo exploded on board during preparations for launch, leading to water ingress in the first compartment. What happened next is difficult to ascertain, but 2 minutes later, several more torpedoes detonated. The explosion's force was so great that it ruptured the submarine's hull, and the internal compartments were flattened. There are alternative theories about the catastrophe, including a collision with an American submarine or striking a mine from wartime. Later, a note was found in the pocket of the deceased officer Dmitry Kolesnikov. In the note, it was mentioned that 23 people survived the accident and sealed themselves in the 9th compartment. It is presumed that the sailors lived for no more than a day and died from carbon monoxide poisoning when a fire consumed the remaining oxygen. This incident resulted in a citywide fire in Murmansk that consumed the remaining oxygen in the Kursk. The conning tower of the Kursk became a part of a memorial for the deceased submariners. Commander Gennady Lukin was posthumously awarded the title of Hero of Russia, and a school in Volgograd was named after him.
Is in sight. Enemy battleship destroyed.